Hello everybody and welcome to my program. My name is Kat and today we are going to be making this mini wooden bead garland. Wooden beads have been a huge decor trend for the last couple of years. If you go on Google or Pinterest and type in wooden bead decor, you're going to find a ton of different items. Hopefully this video will show you just how easy it is to jump on this decor trend and add some fun new items to your home. Let's get started. Let's go over the things you have in your kit, and then I have a few extra things on my table that I'm going to be using today. First of all, you have an assortment of beads. There's two different sizes. You've got your jute twine, tassel maker, wooden tag, paints, paintbrush, and these stickers don't have anything to do with the project. I just like stickers, so those are just a fun little thing. Now, I'm also using a pencil, scissors, some scrap paper, and a little bit of wax paper today. That's just going to help me as I go. I also have my cup of water, which I'm going to use for rinsing my brush, as well as a paint technique that I'm going to show you. So you'll want to get a cup of water. And then I'm using a paint palette. You will have these nice little paint pots in your kit. But if you plan to do any color mixing, you're going to want a scrap of paper or a tray or something to do that mixing on. I've gone ahead and cleared away some of my extra supplies so I can get started on planning out my project. It's kind of helpful if you're trying to do a pattern to sketch something out so you don't get confused when it goes to the painting stage on what you need to be painting and what you're not painting. So what I have done is just gone ahead and written out what I'm working with. We've got 16mm beads and 20mm beads, and there are 16 of each of those sizes. So I've gone ahead and sketched out my entire strand of the garland. I've got my wooden tag here, my tassel here, and then I've gone ahead and done alternating the sizes. Now, you don't have to do it this exact way. You can make up whatever pattern you want, but it might be helpful to draw out that pattern just so that you can keep track of what is going to go where, especially if you do want to paint your beads. You can leave your beads all the natural wood color. That will look really nice, but you can also paint them. And I'm choosing to do a little of both. So I've gone ahead and indicated which of my beads I'm going to paint. I'm going to be painting just the smaller size beads, and half of them will be pink, half of them will be white. So I've gone ahead and sketched that out here. Now, you don't have to do this mini garland strand the way that I have. There's another option to do one that hangs over a bottle or a doorknob. And for that style, you're going to want to use all of your small beads for the loop, and then a few of your large beads for the part that hangs down, and then put your tassel on the bottom, or alternatively, you could put the tag on here instead of the tassel. But that's just a variation on what you can do here. If you wanted to do a longer garland than what we're doing, this is just the little piece that you kind of put on a table in amongst other decorations, or drape it over something, and it's only going to be about 2 feet long. If you wanted to do a longer strand with the twine that you have in your kit, you could do it, but you will probably have to skip the tassel if you use more of the twine for the garland. But to achieve a longer garland, you would just want to put knots in between your beads so that those would be spaced out more. It's up to you. You can use the supplies however you choose, but I'm going to show you this mini garland here in this variation that I have sketched out. So let's get started on some painting. And I've got a piece of wax paper so that I can set my wet beads on top of it and not get paint on my table. It's probably best if you use something that is not going to stick to the paint, such as a nonstick craft mat, wax paper, or another kind of more plasticky coated work surface or paper. So as I said, I'm going to leave the larger beads the natural wood, and I'm just going to do these smaller sized beads, and I'm splitting them in half. So I'm going to just separate which ones I want to do first. All right, so I've split up my beads and I've set half of them off to the side because they've been rolling around. I don't want them to get mixed back up again. And we're just going to talk a little bit about a couple of techniques for the paint. You have the red and the white, which means you have 3 different colors, essentially, because you can mix the white and the red to get pink. If you have not mixed colors before, I'm going to give you a little tip that's going to make it much easier for you. You're going to want to add your dark color slowly to your light color instead of the other way around. When you add a tiny bit of dark to your light color base and mix it until you get the color you want, you're going to use a lot less paint overall. It's much easier to turn a light color darker than it is to lighten a dark color. So what I'm going to do is first paint all of my things that don't require mixing. I'm going to do red on the tag, white on half of the beads, mix some pink, and then do the other half of the beads. You can use your paints as they are and paint straight onto your surface, and you can do multiple coats if you want to get a nice, even, solid color. If you want something that's a little bit more rustic, a lighter color, kind of like a wash or a stain, you're going to want to add water to your paints. It's also going to use a lot less paint if you do it that way, and you could have leftover paint for another project. It's up to you. I'm going to show you both ways of how to use them. And I'm going to actually try to do a lighter stain or wash on my beads. That is kind of a popular thing right now, that sort of shabby whitewash effect. It's really up to you what style you want to go with. You could try starting with the wash, and if you don't like it, you could always paint over it, but you can't go the opposite way. So I'm going to start with my light colors and put my tag off to the side. And I'm just going to take a little bit of my water cup and pour it into my palette. And get a little bit of my white paint here. And just mix it in here. I probably did too much water. So we'll start out and we'll see here. Oh, actually that might be exactly what I want. Now you can see I'm already making a mess and getting this on my hands. If you wanted to, you could wear gloves. If you do the water and the paint, it's going to be a lot messier. Now, this might actually... I think I was right in the first place. This is going to be too much water. So basically, I'm just going to use another one of my containers in my palette. Transfer some water over there. Transfer some paint over there. Mix it up again. We just try it again. So what you can do is hold either of the flatter sides, the sides with the holes, in between your fingers and paint the middle. And once you get a good coat on there, you just set it on its side. And then once it's dry, you can do the opposite, hold it in the middle and paint over those ends. you know, you can buy these wooden beads all over the place, and I wasn't sure how absorbent they were going to be. So I may want to add a little bit more paint to my water. It's kind of a trial and error thing. Different paints act differently. Different surfaces absorb differently. You just have to kind of see. Like I said, it's easier to go add more and go over things than to take away. So it's always better to start out slow and just build. All right, let's try that. That's probably going to be a little bit more what I'm looking for. And this will not be as messy if you are doing just the paint, because the paint is thicker and it's not going to run as much as this is. So I'm just going to go through and give all of my beads a once over. So now I have just a base coat on all of my beads here, and I'll let those dry and see how they look and see what I need to touch up. So while those are drying, I'm just going to move on to doing my tag. Now this I'm going to paint solid red. I think I'll do both sides, but I'm going to have to do that in 2 stages so that it can dry. If you want to leave this natural, you can. If you don't like this haze that's on here, you can sand that off. Both the tag and your tassel makers that we're going to use later, I made both of these on my laser here at home. So this one, I'm not going to do the wash. I want to do a solid red. So I'm just going to use my straight paint color. And I didn't rinse my brush very thoroughly, so it's a little bit light. So this may end up needing a couple of coats. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this one whole layer of red and see where we're at. Alright, so now I have one coat on that, and I'm just going to set that aside and let it dry. And wash my brush here. I've also got a paper towel off to the side that I'm using to dry my brush on. You'll probably want to have a paper towel or rag handy when you're painting, just in case. Bring the rest of my beads over in here. So now we can do a little bit of color mixing. I'm going to bring over some more water because I'm still going to do a light pink for these, kind of a wash effect like I did on the other ones. So I'm going to bring over some more white paint so we have a good base to start with. When you're mixing paint, you want to make sure that if it's going to be a custom color, that you mix enough so that you don't have to remix and possibly have the ratio off. You can also make notes of how much you're adding. If it's 1/4 red and 3/4 white, something like that. Just kind of keep track so you can recreate it again later. And we're just going to take a little bit of red. Like I said, you just want to add slowly till you get the color you like. And that is a nice soft pink. But I'm going to go a little bit more, I think. Just grab a little bit more red. There we go. Just get a slightly darker pink going there. Okay, and now I can start doing my beads. And that isn't super far off, it's very subtle. And like I said, I'm going to do some base coats and let them dry and see where we're at. And I can always add more. So now I'm just going to do a coat on all of them. Alright, now that I've given everything one coat, I'm just going to let things dry. Come back, see if I need to do another coat, flip this guy over, and keep going. While we're waiting for some of our things to finish drying, now is a good time to get the string prepped because we're going to want to let that sit a minute as well. I find that it's much easier to work with the ends of the string if they have a little bit of glue on them and are stiffened up. So I'm just going to take some Elmer's glue. If you don't have glue, you could also use a little bit of tape, really tightly wound on the ends so you have a stiff end like your shoelaces. I'm just going to dip it in the glue. I'm putting it on my wax paper so it doesn't stick to anything else. And take the other end. And now you could use a brush, but I always just use my fingers and smooth it out. And then when it dries, if you still have a lot of these little ends sticking off, you can just cut them. But I like to use my fingers because then I can kind of pinch it and shape it. Alright, and then I'm just going to set that down on the wax paper and leave that to dry. Now that everything has dried, I've got all of my beads together and my tag, and I'm going to start putting it together. I have my diagram off to the side so I can refer to it if I need to. My ends of my twine are nice and stiff so that they'll go through the beads. So let's get started. If you are going to make one kind of like mine with the tag at an end and a tassel at the other end, I'm going to start by attaching it to the tag first, and I'm just going to make a little loop. Put this through. Bring the rest of my twine. I'm using the whole thing. I'm not cutting a piece because whatever is left over I want to use for my tassel. So I'm just trying to make sure that I have some left over, as much as I can. I don't want to waste any of my twine. So I'm just tying my tag on like that. So I have this huge amount of twine hanging off the edge, and then I have one little end here. And that is just going to get worked into the beads. It's only going to be one strand of twine through the rest of it. This is just to tuck in that tail so I don't have anything extra sticking out, and it looks really nice and clean. So then I'm going to get the other end of my twine and make sure everything is untangled before I get started. It's going to be a little tedious to string it across all of this at once, but I think it's the best way to do it when you have a limited amount of your supplies and you're trying to conserve them. Alright, so I'll pull this back in, and the way I have it, I'm starting with my red tag, and then starting with one of my large unpainted beads. So I'm going to put that on. Then I'm getting one of my white beads, large bead, pink bead, and then I'll start to repeat the pattern. So I'm just going to go ahead and string these all the way to the end. Oops. And here's where I'm going to work in this tail. I'm just going to put it underneath and now you see it's pretty hard to get the two strands through the smaller beads. So it's good that we're only going to be doing one strand through the rest of it. It's a little tight otherwise. Alright, so now that's tucked in, and you can see we're starting to form our pattern. So I'm just going to keep stringing, and then I'll check in with you in a minute. Alright, I've got my beads strung, and I don't know if you can tell, this is all fibers from the twine and little wood chips from the wooden beads, from all the loose fibers that are on the inside of the beads. So this is a little bit messy, this jute twine. It does shed quite a bit when you're working with it, but I absolutely love it. This twine is just so fun to use. I use it so frequently. Twine in general is pretty much what I use when I'm wrapping things, tying things off. You can get natural jute twine. You can get it dyed in different colors. It's just great stuff to work with, and it's really inexpensive. And it's great for all kinds of things. So this is great to have around if you want to do more projects like this. You could also do this same project with yarn. And we're going to learn how to do tassels, which you can use a variety of materials to do that. So right now we are going to just leave a few inches at the end of our piece here so that we can tie on our tassel when we're done with it. So I'm just going to grab my scissors and leave about that much, cut it off, and put that over to the side where it's not going to accidentally fall apart. And now I can grab my tassel maker. Like I said, the tassel maker and the tag were both cut on a laser. This is made of a plastic. It's an acrylic, plexiglass. This is wood. They're both cut on the same laser. And you can just kind of compare and see the difference in how they turn out when they're cut. It's pretty cool. The wood gets a burned effect on the edge and the plastic is just smooth. This is what we're going to use for making our tassels. I like this because it's a good medium-sized tassel that you get out of it. You're just going to be doing one size tassel on this. There are other things out there that allow you to make different sizes of tassels, and once you get the basic idea of how to make them, you can make your own things in different sizes. But this is a very good, just standard size for tassels if you're going to make home decor tassels, tassels to put on presents. It's just a great size. To get started, we're just going to take the end of our twine and hold down here at the bottom. And then we're going to wrap. And we're going to wrap until we don't have any more twine left, basically. Now, for me, I'm just using the rest of what I have. And you have in your kit 21 feet of twine. And like I said, the garland itself is about 2 feet, just under 2 feet. And the rest you have to make your tassel. If you were doing this with something else that you had around the house, like yarn is a really good one, or embroidery, thread, or whatever you're using, you can, if you have more string, you can keep going and going and going until you get it the thickness you want. Or you can do a really skinny one. It's really up to you. Now that I have this wrapped around here, I'm going to actually go back. You want to take enough that you're going to be able to tie a knot around this middle here. I'm going to grab my scissors again. I'm going to go to the end. The reason I don't want to leave it up at the top is because this is going to get tied off and we don't want a loose end sticking out up there. So I'm going to put this through on one side of my wound twine and around to the other side. And then I'm just going to tie a knot. And then I'm going to put it around on the other side. Tie a knot. And guess what? I'm doing it again. You can do that. You can just wrap it around as many times as you want if you have the amount to do it with. And then we are just going to slide this all off. Now be mindful right here because you want to keep this loop that's in the center of the top part. You want to keep that open and make sure that you have all of those. So I suggest putting it on the end of your paintbrush or putting it around your finger, putting it on something so you don't lose that open part in the middle. And then you're just going to flip it over and stick your scissors into the other loop and free up that tassel. So now you've got it all nice and fluffy. Alright, and I'm going to do one more knot with this before I cut that off. And if you are worried about this knot coming apart, just grab some of your glue. Put a little dot on there. And then you can leave those ends until the glue dries and then come back and just cut those off. Now remember, I said that we wanted to leave this part open because we need to be able to tie this tassel onto the end of our garland here. So I'm just going to stick this through. I can take my brush out now. And now I can tie a knot want to make this really snug because I don't want a loose gap in between my tassel and my beads. So I'm just gonna pull that as tight as I can. And then I'm gonna send this back up into the beads the way I did on the other end. But I think that's gonna need a little bit of glue on the end like I did before. So I'm just gonna grab some from here, smooth that out, and then I'll let that dry and I'll run it back up through just like I did with the other one. Now, as you can see, I've got about maybe 1.25 inches here before the knot. If you want, you can snug that knot up a little bit higher and have a longer tassel. I'm just going to slide it. I tied my knots really nice and tight, so it's a little hard to do. But now I can slide that up, and you can see now I have a little bit longer tassel. It's really up to you how you want it to look. There's a lot of options there. So now I'm just going to leave this to dry. And like I said, just hide that tucked up in there. And then I will have my finished piece. Alright, so this is still drying a little bit back here, but otherwise I've got my end worked up into the rest of it, so you can't even see where that is. You can't see where this one is either, so you've got this really nice finished look here. Now, I actually really like how this sort of messy wash came out, where it's a little patchy and it's a little light and rustic. This pink, soft pink color came out great. I'm really happy with the way those worked out, and as you saw, it's really not hard and it doesn't take very long to get this all done. The time in between where I was letting things dry was really not that much time at all, but if you wanted to do a little bit at a time and come back to it, you know, since you have those nice little paint pots that close, your paint's not going to dry out. It's really easy to work on this a little bit, go do something else. You could leave it overnight, come back and work on it. You know, do several coats on your beads if you want to get a nice dark, bold look. It's really up to you, and you can do any kind of color combination you want with the ones that you have. You could even pull in some other paint colors if you'd like to do this for a different color scheme. And you could just leave all of the beads without painting them, and this would be a really fast project. You could, you know, get a whole big bunch of beads and crank a few of these out to give as gifts. These will look so cute in your decor. So that is it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed today's program. If you'd like to post a picture of your project on social media, you can tag the library with hashtag #ITPLDmade. We look forward to seeing what you create. If you pre-registered for this program and received a packet of supplies, you also have my contact information if you want to reach out with questions or send me photos of your project. As always, I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you next time.